We will be talking about the effects of exercise on body temperature. In order to explain this topic, our research will be broken down into what causes body temperature to increase during exercise, how the body maintains temperature during exercise, and the effects of environmental temperature on bodily functions. Firstly, I will be talking about body temperature increase during exercise. In the human body, energy requires oxygen to burn starch as a process of producing carbon dioxide and water. A major byproduct of this process is the liberation of heat. Half the energy stores of the metabolic processes of the body are immediately released as heat. The rest of this heat is stored in a high energy molecule known as adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. ATP is a macromolecule that serves as the primary energy currency of the human cell. It contains the nucleoside adenosine and a tail consisting of 3 phosphate oxygen molecules, hence triphosphate. ATP is involved in the transportation of chemical energy within cells for metabolism. The molecule is also used by enzymes and proteins in various cellular processes. For ATP to produce energy, a reaction occurs removing one of the phosphate oxygen groups. The outcome is the production of energy and heat, as well as the conversion from adenosine triphosphate into adenosine diphosphate, or ADP, a process called hydrolysis. To resynthesize the lost phosphate, a chemical compound called creatine phosphate is broken down in combination with ADP to produce ATP. This process repeats until all energy stores are depleted. A particularly large amount of ATP is stored in muscle cells, as high levels of energy is required to produce a muscle contraction. During exercise, more than 70% of the energy that powers muscles is lost as heat, causing body temperature to rise. There are 2 sources in a muscle contraction that cause the production of heat. The first is an exothermic chemical reaction that breaks down ATP into ADP, causing a release of chemical energy. The energy is then converted into mechanical energy to perform the movement of the muscle. The initial release of the chemical energy causes neighboring molecules to collide with each other, causing friction and the production of heat. The second source of heat is within the muscle contraction, which also involves friction but at a much smaller level. When the muscle fibers contract, they rub past each other, exciting the atoms of the fibers, producing small amounts of heat. In summary, ATP is the primary energy currency of the human cell. The breakdown of the molecule causes a release of energy and heat. Hydrolysis is the production of energy as well as the conversion process from ATP into ADP. Resynthesis involves creatine phosphate, which is broken down in combination with ADP to produce ATP. And muscle contractions produce heat through chemical reactions and friction between muscle fibers, causing an increase in body temperature.
Now I'll be talking of the effects of environmental temperature on body functions. Many athletes struggle with doing physical activity in hot weather. Dehydration is very common when people do physical exercise in heat. The negative effects of dehydration are there is a higher perceived exertion, a possible increased reliance on carbohydrates, and this can lead to overheating. Dehydration is made a lot worse in hot, humid, or a windless environment because the mechanisms that cool your body down aren't as efficient or will be stopped to keep fluids in your body. For example, you stop sweating when you get too hot. Overheating is detrimental to bodily functions and can lead to hyperthermia. Some symptoms can be dizziness, muscle cramps, high body temperature, confusion, and unconsciousness. Cold temperatures puts extra pressure on your metabolism and this leads to extra strain on your heart. In cold temperatures, the muscles react slower and have to work harder in order to maintain intensity, in turn causing more lactic acid to be produced. As the body loses more heat, it has to work harder to maintain a stable temperature. This leads to the production of glucose, which is the quickest and easiest metabolized fuel to be used for heat generation over muscle contraction. By consequence, the metabolic load is increased on the body, which leads to less efficiency and less oxygen. The body then has to take the heat from extremities to the core for protection. When exercising in the cold, we don't feel as thirsty or hot, so generally we hydrate less. However, we are still sweating, and in a cold environment, we lose a lot of fluids through our breathing. This can lead to great losses of heat and dehydration. However, the body adapts to an environment. Therefore, if you train in hot or cold weather, the less the environment will actually affect your bodily functions.
created using Powtoon.